Thank you to our friends at DU Hockey. Not at the performance they were hoping for in the one-goal loss. It was good to hear from that crew over there down at Magnus Arena. See if they get a little better luck tomorrow. Denver Broncos play in 2 days on Sunday. Taking on Buffalo up there, up in the north. It's supposed to be a high of only about 38 degrees. It'll be a cold game. You think that generally, the rule of thumb is that means you'll get more running, and maybe you will. But it's an important game for the Broncos in a lot of reasons. It's not really so important for 2019, but it could be very important for 2020 in a couple different ways. The Broncos are in a position where they are basically scouting for next season. Whether it's players like Brandon Allen, players they're not looking at like Drew Lock, or even the coaching staff. You heard the story broken down here on these airwaves earlier in the week when Zach By and Brandon Stokley had Jason LaCanfora on, backing up his story that basically the coaching staff for the Broncos was not all on the same page and that Vic Fangio might not be particularly liked. I don't know if all that is the truth or not. I suspect there's a kernel of truth to it. And then it depends on who you talk to. But the Broncos are evaluating everything. And so this team isn't necessarily worried about the draft position. They're not going to tank. There's none of that. But they also happen to be in a position where they can do a couple of things and get ahead of the 2020 rebuild. And that's what they need to be doing. There's no way around it. That's what they need to be doing. This is another game where you find out what you've got. Brandon Allen in his first game against a bad Cleveland Browns team looked great. He didn't look like an NFL starter or anything, but he looked pretty good. He looked very competent. Second game, the loss against the Vikings, not so much. Couldn't even get to 50% completion percentage. 1 touchdown, 1 pick, quarterback rating of 61.9. But there's no question that the offense has been better across the board with Brandon Allen rather than Joe Flacco, who is injured and out for the year with the neck problem. The problem and the challenge for the Broncos is trying to parse how much of that is Brandon Allen, how much of that is the improvement of Rich Scangarello and some of the Broncos' other players, and how much of that is the fact that Joe Flacco really just looked old this season before the injury that ended his campaign. And I suspect it's that part of it that is probably being underrated. Because the Broncos don't necessarily want to take a look at it and say, look, we signed the wrong guy. We thought Flacco had something left in the tank. He didn't. Flacco's completion ratio was fine, but his average yards per attempt was low. Touchdown to interception ratio was atrocious. Fumbled 8 times in 8 games. Didn't lose all of them, but still fumbled 8 times in 8 games. Flacco just looked like he was done. But the truth is, if you look at the way these ratings break down, if you look at quarterback rating, Joe Flacco put up an 85.1. Brandon Allen's put up 83.5. They're pretty comparable. If you go to QBR, a more modern metric, they're pretty comparable too. Flacco 48.4, Allen 53.7. Neither of those are particularly dazzling. I think that's reasonably fair to say. Now they'll be facing off against a Bills defense that is better than the Vikings defense they faced, which is much better than the Cleveland defense they faced. So the challenge will ramp up for Brandon Allen and the Denver Broncos, and it will ramp up very quickly. be on the road on a cold morning up in Buffalo, and a team in Buffalo, by the way, that absolutely runs the rock. They're in the top 10 in rushing per game. They're in the top 3 in fumbles lost. They don't fumble the ball. And in the red zone, they're clutch. Third in the NFL in red zone percentage at a 67.9 clip. So, how do the Broncos match up against the Bills in this game? How do they go ahead and make a jump from the team they were in the second half against the Vikings into a team that can win this game against a 7-3 opponent on the road? For the defense, that starts with stopping the ground game. Frank Gore has 476 yards on the season. He's being sort of phased out as Devin Singletary. Their very talented rookie is now up to 384. He's averaging 6.1 a carry. And, of course, Josh Allen himself is no stranger to carrying the rock. Allen, with 331 on the year, averaging 4.5 per carry. So you have 3 guys that can carry the ball at any point in time, 2 of which, or maybe all 3, would be on the field at once. For the Broncos, that means now you run the risk of having to leave 8 in the box and find yourself getting surprised by play action. We saw the way that Kirk Cousins carved up to that point, good passing defense for the Broncos. And they're still good. They're still 5th in the league in net passing yards allowed. It's a very good passing defense, but some of its flaws have been exposed. Now, the Bills are not exactly an up-tempo team. Very few teams that are rushing teams first and foremost are. But they're a clever one. They run trick plays, more than a few. They run some gadget plays. They run in different facets, in different setups, in different formations, lots of different ways that they move the ball around. The Broncos have to be aware of it. Draw them in too much. Josh Allen does have plenty of arm strength to go over the top. So this is a game the Broncos defense is going to have to be very disciplined. Their defense is better than the Bills' offense. If you were to ask for a matchup, you say, okay, which is better on that side, the Broncos defense or the Bills' offense? I'll take the Broncos defense. Not by a lot, but I will. What would you do when the Broncos offense stacks up against that Bills defense, though, by the way? They're 3rd in yards per game. There's a lot of reasons to be optimistic. Comparing Allen to Flacco, you'll be amazed at how much better the numbers have gotten across the board. I'll go through those next. with an eye towards the understanding after hearing from Vic Fangio earlier this week saying that Drew Lock might not play at any point because they wouldn't want to get a false positive from a small sample size. I make the argument that some data is better than no data. I guess that's just me. Although I'm going to bet that Fangio and company actually watched some game film of the Bills prior to Sunday, not just went in cold because they didn't want to get a false positive from the small sample size that their first half of the season provides. Nevertheless, there is data in the two games that suggests that the Broncos offense is, well, passing the eye test. And I think when you look at stats and when you look at any sort of analytics, you do it or should do it as part of a larger whole. This is where there ends up being a lot of confusion. People take a look at either analytics or statistics and say, well, whatever, I know what my eyes told me. Well, good, you shouldn't ignore those. But this gives you a way to quantify and sometimes to validate, to avoid, as a matter of fact, false positives. Too often do you see players come out and play a good game against a bad team or just have a couple good plays, and then what we call recency bias kicks in, and then people think, well, he must be a great player. Well, no, you're remembering a couple good plays at the right time. But in Allen's case, some of that is true. When you look at basically the good things and bad things that can happen in any given football game, I've gone and tracked every single drive that the Broncos have made this year. And Allen shows very, very well. Scoring drives are up 41% under Allen. That's an enormous difference. 41%. They're better. Broncos were scoring on 29% of their drives when Flacco went out. Since Allen's taken over, they've scored on 41% of their drives. That is a 41% increase. You look at the results of things that are bad drives, right? 3 and outs, turnovers, turnover on downs. They've gotten 10% better turnovers and 14% overall better at the bad drives. Broncos are having 14% fewer of those bad drives than they had before. So they're scoring on 41% more drives. And the bad drives have gone down 14%. That's night and day. The average drive length, by the way, has gone up 18% under Brandon Allen. It's a big deal. And has made a difference. The Broncos won 2 of the 8 games that Joe Flacco played in. Easy math there, 25%. Well, with Allen, it's 50-50. So there are things to like. Now, the question is, could Drew Lock do much of the same things that Brandon Allen is doing? I would argue yes, almost certainly. Because when we have seen both of them together, both Brandon Allen and Drew Lock when they played in the preseason, against roughly the same level of competition, Lock was better. Essentially across the board. Turnovers, all of it. But the Broncos aren't going in that direction. And who knows when they'll go in that direction. More quotes from Vic Fangio today indicated that they might not go that direction at all this year. That would be malpractice, for lack of a better term. But this week it is what it is. They're not going to activate Drew Lock. Brett Rippon is the backup. Brandon Allen is the starter. And if you're the Broncos trying to win this game, trying to determine, I guess, what Allen is and what the rest of your roster can do, you're seeing that. A vast increase in scoring drives, a decrease in the bad drives that end with unfavorable results, and drives that are going longer, almost a fifth longer every single time out. So all of that goes in the plus column for Allen. The question I would have is that a false positive for Brandon Allen with such a small sample size? And we don't know. You get his third start on Sunday, and the Broncos' injury situation makes it an interesting one. Earlier in the week, Dalton Reisner, Connor McGovern, and Ron Leary all missed practice on Wednesday. Those are the three inside members of your offensive line. And by the way, Broncos fans, the offensive line isn't very good. They are all listed as questionable. In truth, they're all likely to play. Not all questionables are created equal. Reisner, McGovern, and Leary will likely all play. Tim Patrick was listed as questionable as well. He'll probably play. Now, Joe Jones, linebacker and special teams ace, or Jeff Hireman? I wouldn't think that's likely. The other questionable for the Broncos, Juwan James? Right, like he's going to play. I think we know how that goes. When the coach says 50-50 in the next couple weeks, well, there you go. So, James unlikely to play. But the Broncos are going to have a tough time because the three guys in the middle are playing hurt. They're dinged up. That happens to be where the Bills are the stoutest. They are really strong right up the middle. It's going to be hard for the Broncos to find running room up the middle in a game that's going to be very cold. Just a few degrees over freezing is what's expected. The Bills are stout up the middle. They're not going to give the Broncos any sort of easy path to generating yards on the ground. And that was with all those guys healthy. How does that impact the running game and the passing game? Allen is certainly more mobile than Flacco, which is great. If Joe Flacco was still the quarterback, this game would be, you should be preparing for disaster. Multiple sacks, possibly turnovers due to the pressure. Maybe Brandon Allen could avoid that. Maybe he can find a way to make that a little bit different. But the Broncos are going to have to get their work done probably outside the tackles. The quick passes, runs, it's a game where you should probably expect more Phillip Lindsay than Royce Freeman. Now, whether that'll happen or not, who knows? But they're going to need the speed of Lindsay is going to be more effective against what the Bills bring than the power of Freeman. Because that can be power against power, but the Bills' power is stronger. There's an opportunity to win this game. This game is far more winnable than last week's against Minnesota. And they were in that game. They weren't all that far from what I thought was going to happen. It would happen in a strange fashion, but I had it 27-16 Minnesota, ended up 27-23 Minnesota. So the Broncos got an extra touchdown. Can they do it again? Going to have to go to Cortland Sutton a lot. It's just that simple. Noah Fant's been getting better. Tim Patrick is questionable to play. He will probably play. But he might not be at his best. And even if he is, the 77 receiving yards he had last game is the second best performance of his entire career. So the Broncos are going to be down a few tools in the toolbox when it comes to both the play design and the players that they need to be using. So over the course of the program, we'll go through that. But it makes it very interesting, the play calling and the performance. Now that Brandon Allen was exposed a little bit, sub 50% passing percentage, teams are going to notice that. The Bills' defense is going to notice that. And they're going to work towards it. Down at the Pepsi Center tonight, the Denver Nuggets took on the Boston Celtics in the second of two statement-type games. Houston was number 2 in the West. Nuggets knocked them off. The Celtics were number 2 in the East. The Nuggets knocked them off too. Joining us to break that game down, what it means, will be Matt Moore, our Nuggets insider, and he'll join us next. The Denver Nuggets knock off the Boston Celtics at home 96-92 in a game of runs. You know, in the NBA, they talk about teams making runs. That is exactly what happened in this case. The Nuggets started off with a terrific first quarter. They end up playing a good game on the whole, but made it interesting at the end. At one point, with only 4 minutes and change left in the quarter, the Nuggets had 7 points in the fourth. 7. That's where they were at. But they hang on, score 26 points there, and end up taking that win. Joining us now, courtesy of Budweiser, is Matt Moore. And Matt, this game obviously turned immediately on the injury to Kemba Walker. How do you think that we know that would probably change things for Boston, and maybe the result is different for the Nuggets if Walker plays that whole game. But how did the game shift on that towards the Nuggets, or even the fact late in the game they didn't play so well, but they hang on to win?
Yeah, I think actually there was like two effects on it, which is one, the Celtics had stormed back and were within 6 when Walker got hurt. And then the Nuggets went on a run, and obviously the Celtics were very shook, understandably, after that serious injury to Kemba Walker. And then they had the game well in hand and just kind of stagnated, and it's just hard to keep the edge up. Paul Millsap said after the game that there are certain teams that when they're down and things are all the adversities against them, some teams will quit, and then there are teams that will fight back even harder, and Boston's definitely got the latter. So it's not surprising necessarily. We see this all the time in the NBA where a player goes down and everyone's like, wow, look what they're doing. NBA players respond to adversity, and there's a good push, and Denver did enough to win. And I think that in a game where you've got all these different weird factors involved, they played well enough to win. And I think that's a good thing when you put it in context of their overall resume.
Yeah, I think that's the thing. You look at it and you maybe say, okay, yeah. You look at the box score and say, Kemba Walker, if he would have played a full complement of maybe 20 more minutes, probably scores 5 points, which would be the way the difference would be in the score. But it doesn't really work out that way because then teams shift the way they play. And for the Nuggets, pretty good performance across the board. I thought Paul Millsap in particular really did a nice job for them, not only with the potential for the late outside shot, but he just seemed to be there where you needed him to be the vast majority of the game.
Yeah, he's been that way all season. The numbers bear that out in terms of his plus-minus. He has been one of the most impactful players on Denver. Hitting those outside shots is crucial because it punishes the defense for helping inside on Jokic. But he just makes so many defensive plays. Deflections, swipes, steals, an offensive rebound in the first half that led to an open three-pointer for Will Barton. That was crucial. He makes all of those plays. Coaches in all sports will talk about winning plays. Paul Millsap makes about 10 winning plays a game, and they're all huge, and they never show up in the box score. He has been a huge part of the Nuggets' initial success.
Late in the game, Jamal Murray, who's been having a really rough time up and down in the last few games shooting the ball, looked a little bit like something we talked about at the beginning of the year that you mentioned, that every once in a while he feels like he just puts the team on his back and he's going to carry it himself. But this time he took a couple shots that maybe seemed ill-advised, but hit them. And this is just kind of the Tao of Murray, isn't it? That at times he's just going to do this whether he's just feeling it.
Yeah, and I think a lot of it, there's a time and a place for it, and I actually didn't mind most of the shots that he took in that situation. Even if they were bad shots, it's late in a game, the energy level is high, the ball movement has stopped, you need somebody to go get you a bucket. And that's one of the reasons that you have Jamal Murray on your team. He's coming off of, I thought, one of his best performances in terms of non-shooting last game with 9 assists and 6 steals. He was everywhere in that Rockets game. So for him to step up when they needed him most, I think that it's actually a pretty good thing. He had some trouble with his passes tonight. The Celtics played the pocket pass exceptionally well, and it shows you that now Murray's kind of reaching a point where, okay, if you hurt him with his passing, then he's going to hurt you with his scoring. And if he's missing shots, he's going to make plays. And that's really where you want your point guard to be. And I have been really impressed with the growth of Jamal Murray from the start of the season.
Yeah, that last game I talked about that on this program too, that he was way up in the rebounds and assists, even when he'd been shooting poorly. And that seems to be like the next step in the evolution, right? When the shot isn't falling, you have to find another way to impact the game. That was the one thing you could look at Jamal Murray and say, he just hasn't been that guy yet. Now in the last few games, it seems like maybe he is.
Yeah, I think for sure. Some of his passes the last couple of games have just been pinpoint, especially in that Rockets game. He made a few just absolute beauties that were killer. And in this game, he had the shot going more because of how the Celtics were playing. And that's what you want, is you want him to be able to take what the defense is giving him and make the right play. And I think that's huge for his growth. And also, look, in years past, the defensive rating for this team in terms of points they've allowed per 100 possessions has spiked every time he's on the court. And this year, that's not the trend that we're seeing. They defend well when he's on the court, and he's not just along for the ride. He's actively a part of it. And I think his energy level and commitment on that end is another reason the Nuggets have been so good.
You're not going to complain about it in a win, and really you shouldn't complain about it anyway. But I looked at the game, and I didn't think that the Nuggets were only out there hitting jump shots, but they were almost outshot 2-1 at the charity stripe. Was the whistle a little bit tilted towards Boston tonight?
I don't think so. I think it was a tough physical game on both ends. I think that some of the fouls were in transition on the Nuggets. I think instead of one of the key things was just the Celtics, and this has been true for every Brad Stevens team, they are one of the best deflection teams inside in the league. They are just superb at swiping the ball away without fouling on the interior. The Spurs teams for years were great at that. The Warriors for years have been great at that. Really great defensive teams are always really good at disrupting the ball on the interior, and I think that was more a sign of that. I think it was a tough physical game. Maybe there were a few calls that could have gone either way, but also I think it was for the most part, you didn't see the Nuggets really losing their minds on most of the calls. I thought for the most part, it was just Nuggets mistakes.
Had an opportunity, too, to see a little bit more of Michael Porter Jr. in the non-blowout. Now, granted, the Nuggets had a big lead at the time, but you saw him in some minutes that mattered. And in only 10 minutes, 4 points out there on the floor, but he got a block. He got 5 boards. Did you see Michael Porter play more of an NBA-style performance tonight, or does he still look like he's just trying to get his points?
He looked pretty lost. Not gonna lie. He was a big reason for the comeback that the Celtics staged. He blew several defensive rotations, and everyone's wanted Michael Malone not to sub him out immediately when he makes mistakes, and Malone left him in, and it kept costing him. The putback dunk was great. He got better athleticism, and he's getting more confident in using it. And I think that's a real asset. The effort level is there. Part of it is just, look, he's a phenomenal shooter, and he's not playing enough. And I think that when he gets in, he's so hyped that it's tough for him to find a comfortable rhythm shooting. And that's what he brings to the team more than anything, is his scoring capacity. And if he's not doing that, he's going to wind up being a net negative. So it's working through those problems. It's going to continue to be a push and pull, because the last couple of games especially, he's had a little bit longer of a leash when he's played, and the mistakes have come pretty frequently.
Is this, though, something that's good? I mean, obviously, he's got to take his lumps. He's got to learn these situations. And when you can learn them cheaply in a win, seems like that's better. So do you like the way he's being used, even if he's making some mistakes that lead to comebacks? And when it's not costing them games, he eventually has to go through this, right?
Yeah, it's just, I guess here's the thing. If the Nuggets had wound up losing that game, if he left them in 5 minutes more and it had gotten lower and the Nuggets wind up losing that game, Michael Malone's going to take the L for that loss, and Nikola Jokic and Will Barton and Gary Harris, and nobody's really going to mention, MPJ because of his expectations. Well, he's a rookie, but these are the minutes that cost you when you're in high pressure games. Part of it's just been the Nuggets schedule. They've been in tight games versus good teams consistently, and that's a hard environment for guys to be in. What they need is they need to get a few more big leads versus teams comfortably, so that they can let him ease into it in a game where the stakes don't feel quite as high, where every possession isn't so crucial. But overall, look, he's making progress. These minutes are good for the Nuggets organization and for Michael Porter Jr. They're bad in the short term for Denver trying to manage leads.
Nikola Jokic, can't really forget about him. Triple-double tonight. He's looked so different at times than you saw last year. Not the kind of guy that just dominated a game and dictated all of it. But tonight, he looked every bit like that kind of guy again, didn't he?
Yeah, some really great moves, especially versus Tice. Just, getting the hook shot, little push plays. he's working a lot better in the pick and roll. He's gotten more comfortable with where his shot should come from. He's not just hoisting jumpers to try and get teams to stop backing off of him. He's playing more into the comfort zone. The energy level is obviously just much different. He's just a happier guy. Nikola had music on in his locker for the first time I can remember since he's been here, which shows you he was singing along with the Serbian music, which was a nice kind of like different look from him. So he's obviously in a much better place, I think, mentally and emotionally than he was a few weeks ago. And he gets to have those little stretches. But, I thought his passing was on point tonight. And, again, he's getting better at, okay, if they're going to interrupt all my passes, I have to look to score. And as he gets more of a feel for that, I think we're going to see some bigger games from Jokic.
He is Matt Moore. Follow him on Twitter at Hardwood Paroxysm. Matt, thanks so much. Appreciate it. This has been two back-to-back games that make statements. The Nuggets had looked a little bit off in parts of the season, even though they were getting wins. Not these last two games. These were special. Thanks so much for the time, and have a terrific weekend.
All right, talk to you next week, Sean.
Thanks a bunch. That's Matt Moore, our Nuggets Insider, brought to you by Budweiser, the official beer sponsor of the Denver Nuggets. These are two big-time wins against big-time contending teams. Yeah, they're at home. I get it. Yeah, the Celtics had an injury. I get it. But back-to-back, in 1 week, you knock off the Rockets and the Celtics. Hey, that's legit. The Nuggets are 11-3, and they deserve to be 11-3. This very, very fun season is just getting going. Our stat of the night is next. Well, Bill Belichick's not wrong. And the final score was 96-92 Denver Nuggets over the Boston Celtics. Nikola Jokic, 36 minutes, 18 points, 16 rebounds, 10 assists. No other player on either team had more than 10, and Jokic had 16. No other player had more than 5 assists in the game on either team, and Jokic had 10. Absolutely dominant performance by Jokic. That's his third triple-double of the season. Nuggets have only played 14 games, but he has 3 triple-doubles. That's par for the course for Jokic. Believe it or not, our stat of the night is this. Nikola Jokic, with his 31st career triple-double tonight against the Celtics, moved into a tie for 12th place in NBA history with triple-doubles. The man he tied, Boston Celtics great, John Havlicek. Top 12, top dozen guys in the history of the NBA in triple-doubles. Nikola Jokic, it feels like he's still just getting started in his career. He's 24 years old. It's easy to forget that. He's 24. This is his 5th season, but he's 24. The 2 people directly ahead of him now on the list are also, well, primarily known as being Boston Celtics, Rajon Rondo and the great Bob Cousy. They have 32 and 33. So, given Jokic's pace, he should be in the top 10 all-time by Christmas. And he'll still only be 24 years old. That is amazing. He's not, however, the top Denver Nugget on the list. That is Fat Lever, who had 43 in his career, just ahead of James Harden. Harden is going to pass him any day now. And Larry Bird. If this time next month you're talking about the Denver Nuggets having 2 of the top 10 all-time triple-doubles, you would win some bets in your pub with that one. You can go to the local bar. What team has 2 guys in the top 10 all-time in triple-doubles that you would not expect? That would be it. He's got a long way to go to catch the greats. Might even be able to get to Lever this season. I suppose it's possible. James Harden's going to keep doing his thing, but then it's a big jump. Larry Bird is at 59, and then Wilt Chamberlain is 78. Top active player, LeBron James, 86th, 5th all-time. But that's phenomenal. It's easy to take for granted when you watch Jokic play and you watch the performances, and he kind of lumbers at times, and sometimes he looks disinterested, and sometimes he doesn't seem interested in putting up shots. And then in the end, you look at what he's done and that he's still 24. That's terrific. Absolutely terrific. The RamosLaw.com text line is 303-713-1043. We'll go to that now and talk to caller Butch. How you doing, Butch?
Getting it on with Sean. How's it going?
Okay.
Good. Well, there's 2 things I want to touch on. First off, not the Broncos, but kind of related to Broncos, because the team I hate the worst, the Chargers, that play the Broncos every year. And I totally agree with you, unless I misunderstood you, about Phyllis Diller being in the Hall of Fame, which he almost for sure will be. That, in my book, that is so laughable. 3 words, too many mistakes. Well, 6 words. Doesn't pass eye test. And I don't know. I just thought I'd agree with you on that if I heard you correctly.
Yeah. I don't.
Laughable.
I don't knock Phillip Rivers. I think he's been a good quarterback. I don't think he's a Hall of Fame quarterback.
Yeah, but it's not the Hall of Good. It's the Hall of Great.
Right. Yeah, I don't think he's a Hall of Fame quarterback.
Okay, so we agree on that.
Yep.
To me, it's not even close. I mean, But anyway, not to beat that in the ground too much. But I heard you, and I've been wanting to get off my chest. I appreciate talking to you again as always. As far as Drew Lock, I agree with you, everything you've been saying, and I kind of have 2-3 things outside of John Elway and everyone just being completely bonkers. The only thing I can come up with is kind of 2 or 3 things rolled up into one. Either, number one, they're somehow, some way so sure that he's the man for the job that they don't want to risk him getting injured in a lost season,
okay,
or his injury is worse and isn't better, and they don't want him to re-injure it, but it's you know how you can be good enough to practice, but maybe not good enough to be in a game.
yeah.
They're the only things I can come up with. I'm not saying that's what's going on. I'm just saying I've thought about it, and it's kind of the only things that make sense. Those wrist injuries. I mean, Philip Lindsay had a whole year off and still isn't 100%. I don't know how similar his injury is or was to what Philip Lindsay had, but being a quarterback, I mean, does that make sense that maybe they don't want to admit it's a lost season until they're mathematically eliminated? You know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah, I do. Yeah, I think
barring whatever, or eliminating, just they just completely lost their marbles. Going the next step beyond that. Now that leads to the question: how could they be sure he's the person for the job with so little regular season experience? But could it be possible that injury is worse than they want to say? And I mean, because it leaves you in a real predicament as far as, because if Drew Lock's the guy and then they draft a quarterback and you got 2 quarterbacks that are, look to be above average NFL starters, then you're not drafting an offensive lineman, you're not drafting another receiver, you're not drafting another offensive lineman or another offensive lineman. Do you know what I'm saying? I
do, Butch, and thank you very much for the call. Those are good points, and that's where the Broncos are leaving us right now, is that you have to speculate. You have to come up with theories that fit the facts. I think the possibility that they really believe that Drew Lock is going to be good enough in 2020, I guess that's a possibility. Doesn't seem like Vic Fangio buys that, but maybe John Elway does. When it comes to the injury, though, I don't think it's it, because remember, the injury was more to the thumb. And if you can't throw, then you can't practice or play. And he was medically cleared over a month ago. Medically cleared to play over a month ago. So I don't necessarily think that's it. I don't think it's the injuries. Now, one of the other theories that I thought was interesting that James Marilat brought to the fore earlier this week, that is a possibility. Maybe the Broncos are bluffing. Maybe they really are going to start him against the Chargers, and they always were, but they're not going to say it until it's Chargers week because they don't want to answer all the questions. And they don't want to neuter Brandon Allen before he gets into his game against Buffalo. Again, I don't know if that's the case. It doesn't feel like that's the case, but it is a theory that fits the facts, and maybe one of the better ones. Maybe they do intend on playing him against the Chargers. But the second you mention that, every question is going to be about Drew Lock. So maybe they're avoiding it. That could be it too. We don't know. But how Brandon Allen plays on Sunday will go a long way towards finding out. If Allen is great, Broncos aren't going to go away from him. If the Broncos win, they're not going to go away from him. So now some of this is out of Drew Lock's hands. We'll find out how they do and what they do. I'm intrigued. We've seen one pretty good performance out of Brandon Allen and one mediocre performance out of Brandon Allen. This is the toughest matchup. We will see where he's at. Break down more of this Bronco game coming up next. The Denver Broncos head to Buffalo to take on the 7-3 Buffalo Bills. Broncos, of course, 3-7 themselves. 1-4 on the road. Trying to turn things around against one of the better teams in the AFC. Josh Allen, their quarterback, is the reigning AFC Offensive Player of the Week. It's terrific. Last week, now again against the Dolphins, but very good. 256 passing yards, 56 rushing yards, 4 total touchdowns as they rolled 37-20. Bills are in better situation injury-wise than the Broncos. They have 2 players who aren't necessarily expected to play, and that is actually a little better off for the Broncos. The Broncos have, of course, lots of injury situations. A lot more than 2 people that won't be available. And it's also intriguing to see there are two particular things I'm fascinated with in this game. That you want an idea of how it's going to break down. Pay attention to these things. The Broncos need to stay out of zone coverage. Allen is not a dead-eye quarterback. He's not supremely accurate. He's not the kind of guy that absolutely goes out there and just deals. Now, he's getting better. He's taking fewer deep shots and worrying more about first downs than touchdowns. That's good. And it's paid off for the Bills. But if you look at QBR, Allen is 8th, the 8th-ranked quarterback against zone coverage. In man coverage, he's 33rd. That's last among qualifying quarterbacks. 33rd. Can the Broncos play enough man to keep them honest? Chris Harris can. Can Devontae Harris? Can Duke Dawson? How do they go ahead and handle that? We'll see. I expect that the Broncos will play man. Even though it's not really what Vic Fangio loves to do, it does better suit the Broncos personnel. But the Broncos do have gaps. This is a run-first team they'll be playing in the Bills, and the Bills will try to get it done that way until they have to pass. But they can pass, and they can surprise you. They have a great deal of talent. They have speed. John Brown could fly, and Josh Allen can hit him wherever he is. Allen's got that kind of arm. 44 out of the 56 catches that John Brown's made this year have gone for first downs. That's impressive. Cole Beasley, as you know, he's maybe not the most talented receiver, but he gets it done. He does move the sticks. There is an option there. Frank Gore can catch a little bit out of the backfield. One of the things that you will see is passes out of the backfield. Devin Singletary can as well. Broncos' old friend, would you say friend? Isaiah McKenzie, playing something of a part there as well. They use speed. They spread you out, and then they let Allen improvise. Broncos are going to have to be careful. Now, some things the Broncos have done well lately with Brandon Allen at quarterback. Keep in mind, for a game and a half of Brandon Allen's 2 games, he's had one major advantage that Joe Flacco didn't always have. That was Andy Janovich. Doesn't have him anymore. Andrew Beck, I think, is doing his best, and I don't think Andrew Beck is terrible. But he's not Janovich. Going against a very stout defensive line, especially that middle of the line, the D tackles, Buffalo. Without Janovich, that is going to be tough sledding. Ed Oliver and Jordan Phillips, Star Lodolele. I mean, these guys, these are big bodies. These are guys that are tough to move around. The Broncos' interior of their line, 3 of them, Reisner, McGovern, and Leary, all missed practice on Wednesday and are still considered questionable. No Janovich. Plus, guys that are playing at least dinged up in the middle against the big guys for the Bills, that's a mismatch. The Broncos aren't really going to be able to do much running up the middle. Now, you have to keep them honest, but don't expect to get any luck there. Don't expect to do very much there. That's going to be one of the major stories of this game. I do not think the Broncos win this game if they have to throw a crazy number of passes. Remember, in 2 games, Brandon Allen has thrown 59 total passes. So not quite 30 a game. I think that's what you want, quite frankly. He threw 20 in the game they won. He threw 39 in the game they lost, and he only completed 43%. The Broncos really don't want Brandon Allen throwing more than 24 times. In fact, I'll venture to say this much. If Brandon Allen throws 25 or more times in this game on Sunday, the Broncos will lose. Allen is not accurate. Not nearly accurate enough by today's NFL standards for starters. While he can move around and while he's an upgrade over Joe Flacco, most NFL quarterbacks would be. It's no knock on Flacco. Father Time is undefeated. And the Broncos appear to have misread it. Flacco is further to done than they thought. For Brandon Allen, a guy who'd never thrown a pass till the Cleveland game, to look that much better than Flacco immediately says less about Allen than it does about what was left in Flacco's tank. So if the Broncos have to go to the pass more than 24 times, I think they'll lose. This is going to be a cold game. The Broncos need to keep it on the ground, keep moving the chains, and don't put yourself in a situation where Brandon Allen has to win it for you. He's been very, very nice to watch. There's no problem with that. But he's looked like a good backup. And like any good backup, you don't go into a game telling people, oh, you know what we really need? The backup to go out there and throw the ball 40 times. That's how we'll win. You won't win that way. It won't happen. They won't win. So they've got to go ahead and be creative in the running game and not give up on it, especially when they get stuffed, and they will get stuffed. The Broncos are going to have more than a handful of running plays that are going to be for no gain or for losses. There's almost no way around it. You can't just ignore the middle of the field. But it's a bad matchup top to bottom for the Broncos when they do it. So the path to a win exists, but it's somewhat narrow. And it involves the offense playing better than it usually does, and it involves the defense playing a lot better than it did against Minnesota, especially in the second half. One of the worst halves of football Broncos defense has played in many years. Broncos still aren't generating the turnovers they need. They might need to do it here. One of the most famous turnovers in the history of the NFL is the subject of our time machine today. You love it. I love it. We all love it. Everyone's going to love it. I'll tell you what it is next. We don't have to go back too far for this one. 2012, Thanksgiving Day, the first ever, this is a strange one, the first ever primetime Thanksgiving game broadcast. History of the NFL. This game was the first primetime Thanksgiving game. Now, of course, you expect it. But 7 years ago, when the Jets hosted the Patriots, the entire country was watching. When the Jets lined up in an I formation, and this happened. That was the nice way of putting it from Chris Collinsworth on ABC. The backside knocking, otherwise we call it the butt fumble. Everyone in the NFL history knows the butt fumble. Future Denver Bronco quarterback Mark Sanchez basically ran directly into the back of his own player, who was admittedly absolutely blocked straight back. I mean, Brandon Moore just got blown off the line. And Sanchez ran directly into his backside. Sanchez, 7 years ago, this was his quote. And it's give him credit. Because you know what? I know it haunted him for the rest of his career, but at the same time, he just sort of expected and understood, I think, that look, it was just a bad play. It happened. It's embarrassing. Sanchez's quote was, "Yeah, it sucked. I ran into some guy's butt, dropped the ball on the turf, and some guy scored. And on my favorite holiday. It wasn't cool." That's about all you can say, right?
Do you think they sit around the dinner table on Thanksgiving every year now, and it gets brought up?
At the Sanchez household?
Yes.
They ask him not to drop this, or somebody cuts in front of him when they're like in the kitchen.
Don't bring your plate behind me.
Right.
Something like that.
Something. I hope so.
I mean, because here's the thing. On Thursday of next week, we're going to be watching Thanksgiving.
They're going to show it.
And they're going to show it on TV while we're watching one of the games.
They will absolutely show it. There's no question they will show it. My favorite was the later that year when Jets fans, because of course, it was another horrible year for the Jets. Jets fans started showing up because you could buy the customized jerseys online.
Oh, gosh.
And people had like butt fumble jerseys.
The name said butt fumble.
Right, on the back.
Oh, my gosh.
Yeah.
I don't remember that one.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And that's when the NFL started being picky about what you could put on the back of them. But yeah, there were a lot of butt fumble 6 jerseys.
That's got to suck, man.
That's the worst.
Your whole career, you go to 2 AFC championships. That's forgotten.
Yeah, that's all he's remembered for.
The butt fumble.
That's all he's remembered for. And you're right. Like
top 10 pick.
Had a pretty good career, top 10 pick, great college player.
That's embarrassing.
That's rough.
It is.
And the funny thing is, it wasn't even really, you look back, 7 years later, I'm here to sort of absolve Mark Sanchez. Go watch that clip on YouTube. Brandon Moore gets just, as Collinsworth explained, forklifted backwards.
Yeah.
Directly into Sanchez. He's running, he's leaning forward because he's running. And then the 310-pound lineman comes crashing backwards into him.
I wonder
what are you going to do?
I wonder what the reaction was when they went back that next day to rewatch the film, maybe as a team or just offense. And then you're sitting there like, if you're the coach, you're telling.
Didn't you have to laugh?
I mean, you got to laugh.
You had to laugh.
But you're telling the team.
You're already over the loss. What are you going to do?
I mean, that offensive lineman kind of gets swept under the rug here because Mark Sanchez fell down and fumbled.
Right. And he just got smoked.
Do you know who the guy is that got knocked back?
Yeah, Brandon Moore.
See, not many people would know that.
Yeah.
I think you're just looking at it right now, but
oh yeah, I had to look it up. I had to look it up.
But no one will remember that.
No. Now, to be fair, part of the reason it happened, if you can imagine the play, is because Sanchez kind of forgot what the play was.
Yeah.
Because it looked like he meant to hand it off to his left, and then that guy had already taken off. He's like, uh-oh. So he turns around and tries to run. Sanchez did explain that, actually. Said, quote, I was thinking a different play in my head. That was a mental error there. As soon as I realized there was no one to hand it to, I started to run towards the line, tried to cover it up and get down, and I slid right into Brandon Moore. I was just trying to get down. The play was over. Say, Uncle, do the right thing. Not a big believer in luck, but that was pretty unlucky. It was really too bad.
That's amazing. It really is. It was a disaster from the get-go, and it went as worse as you could possibly imagine.
Maybe the best quote was Moore. This was 6 days after the game when he was being asked about it. Said, quote, you could feel it. You knew something wasn't right.
Yeah, when
no one was supposed to crash into my backside. What happened?
When you're an offensive,
and now they're running the other way.
When you're an offensive lineman,
and the play wasn't supposed to come to my side.
Yeah.
Why is anyone behind me at all? What's happening?
When you're an offensive lineman and you get hit in the back, something's not right. Because usually your defender's in front of you. The only person behind you is your quarterback. So pretty good odds it's your quarterback hitting you there.
Yeah, there's only so many guys. That's so rough.
Well, I got another one for Time Machine.
Oh, okay.
Let's go back to 1963. Do you know what today is?
Well, of course, it's the anniversary of President Kennedy's assassination.
So I want to ask you this question. What are we going to find out first? Who killed the President of the United States in 1963? Or when are we ever going to find out Drew Lock could start for this Broncos team?
Ooh, it'll be the latter. I mean, I think we know who killed President Kennedy. Just don't know if it was a conspiracy, right?
Yeah, I guess the question
because then Jack
who
Ruby
really
killed
did it.
Lee Harvey Oswald 4 days later, and then nobody knew because then he could never talk.
Yep. No trial. That's always one of my. I love researching that one.
Yeah, that is. It's a sad but fascinating moment in history for sure. Definitely two studies in contrast there when you have that and the butt fumble. Did you play that clip again? I love that clip. Oh no. This Collinsworth as it happens. Oh no, as if he's fully aware of the embarrassment that is going to happen forever in this play.
That's the best part of the whole highlight.
He laughs and then says it.
Oh no, that did not just happen.
Like I'm just calling the game, and I don't wish that on anybody. His whole career is going to boil down to that. And dude, poor Sanchez, he just gets his clock clean. I mean, it's like he runs into a brick wall.
Oh, you're running into an offensive lineman.
I mean, he's 1 second he's sort of up, the next second he is flat on his back, and that ball is gone. Oh my goodness. Things are still really no better for the Jets, 3-7 this year. Patriots 9-1. 7 years later, it's kind of the same story. Although the Jets have won 2 in a row. One of the hottest teams in the AFC. That sounds crazy. Hotter than the Patriots. They've only won 1 in a row. Get this. Here are your hottest teams in the AFC on winning streaks. The Ravens won 6 straight. After that, the Raiders with 3, the Browns and the Jets with 2. Huh. Might not have guessed that coming. Can they continue? We'll find out because when we come back, we're going to go through every single one of those games, tell you what's going to happen. Got out the crystal ball. We'll do that next. Oh, that sound means this is my favorite time of the week. We get to go through all the games, pick what's going to happen. We'll get some of them right. Where are we going, Kevin?
Well, we're going to start off with the Seattle Seahawks at 8-2 taking on the 5-5 Philadelphia Eagles.
Ooh, well, okay. Look, I love the Seahawks in this one. I like the way they're playing. I think they are maybe, I know the 49ers record. I think the Seahawks might be the most dangerous team in the NFC. I really do like the way they're playing. The Eagles are favored in this, but nah. Give me Russell Wilson, Seattle.
Yeah, Carson Wentz this year he's been blah. I think we were talking about this Monday night. We don't know who he is right now. I'm going to take the Seattle Seahawks in this one too. Russell Wilson having an MVP type year.
By the way, the Seahawks are 5-0 on the road too.
That's remarkable.
Yeah.
That is flat out remarkable. Next up, we got an average game. The Detroit Lions at 3-6-1 taking on the dumpster fire up at the nation's capital with the Redskins.
Oh yeah, Washington and Haskins there. Look, they're just trying to get Haskins' feet wet, and it's not working really well. But it doesn't matter because their season's lost. If Matt Stafford can play, Lions cruise. If Matt Stafford can't play and they have to go to Jeff Driscoll again, the Lions still win. They just don't cruise.
They're just that much better, I guess.
Yeah, the Lions. Give me the Lions.
Gosh, can you imagine Jeff Driscoll versus Dwayne Haskins?
Yeesh.
Oh gosh, no one should watch.
I think
that
I'd rather.
game.
Yeah, I'll pick one of the other ones to watch.
They should give their money back to the fans. Next up, we got the Oakland Raiders at 6-4, traveling to New York to take on the 3-7 Jets.
See, I want to say the Raiders have got this easily. The records, they're 6-4. The Jets are 3-7, same as the Broncos. But out of the 3 wins, the Jets have 2 of them at home. They're 2-3 at home. The Raiders are 1-3 on the road. And I think they're still kind of getting used to each other. You have teams that can both run. Le'Veon Bell for the Jets. Josh Jacobs looks terrific as a rookie. To my mind, this is about Derek Carr and Darren Waller, his tight end that's been a breakout this year. If they can play well, I don't think the Jets can match up against that. But Sam Darnold, by the way, has been dealing since he's come back. Since he returned, he's tied for the NFL lead in touchdown passes. So I think the Jets are going the right direction, but I think the Raiders, I think they have a little more power in their ground game, as great as Le'Veon Bell is, and I love the way that Waller and Carr are on the same page. So I'm going to go with the Raiders. I think it's going to be close.
Yeah, I like to cheer for Adam Gase just because of his connection with Peyton Manning, but when you look at the Raiders, they're actually in the 6th seed right now in the AFC in the playoffs. And they're kind of rolling. I like Josh Jacobs. He's turned out to be a really nice pick.
Yeah.
And I like Derek Carr over Sam Darnold. I'm going to take the Oakland Raiders in this one. Mm-hmm. Next up, we got the Carolina Panthers at 5-5, taking on the New Orleans Saints at 8-2 in New Orleans.
Oh, okay. Christian McCaffrey's been amazing, but the bloom is off the rose with Kyle Allen. You remember how not too long ago they're like, wait, Kyle Allen's the answer. They'll just move away from him. Yeah, he's not.
He's coming back to life.
He's much like Brandon Allen. He's a nice backup.
I wonder if they're related.
Well, we're all sort of related, aren't we? But no, this is the Saints. Michael Thomas is having if Michael Thomas didn't play the rest of the year, he'd still be a Pro Bowler. He's got almost 1,150 yards receiving already, and the Saints are at home where we know they're spectacular. No. Give me Breeze. Give me the Saints. New Orleans easy.
Yeah, I always go for my boy Christian McCaffrey. Now in 99 overall on Madden.
That's right.
I'm taking the Saints in this one.
That's good for you for being a professional.
That's a bad one. Coming up next, we have the Miami Dolphins at 2-8. They're on a streak, right?
Yeah.
Taking on the Cleveland Browns at 4-6.
Ew, that's another game I don't think I want to watch. Look, this is Cleveland. Obviously, they're reeling from the Myles Garrett situation, and it's not just they lost a guy. They lost a guy who was leading the league in sacks. So that's a major loss. But I just think the Browns have enough talent that they are starting to do what they should have done a while ago. They're asking Baker Mayfield to just force the ball to Odell Beckham Jr. and let him make plays. Adding Kareem Hunt has made their offense more dynamic. I think the Browns actually win this pretty easily.
It's hard to imagine that if the Dolphins win this one and the Broncos lose,
they'd have the same record.
Same record. Isn't that
the Dolphins
something?
Traded away everybody on their team that was good.
Exactly.
In an effort to tank.
I'm taking the Browns in this one, but I'm going to be cheering for the Miami Dolphins.
If the Browns win 5-6,
What the Browns could be doing,
not
Browns thing.
dead yet. Oh yeah, they could. They could.
I mean, this game will not surprise me either way, but I'll take the Browns with you in this one.
All righty.
Next up, we got the Pittsburgh Steelers.
Wait, who are they playing?
Taking on the 0-10 Cincinnati Bengals.
No, thank you. Look, the Steelers aren't very good, but they're better than the Bengals. I mean, that's not even worth dissecting. The Bengals are going to go winless. Steelers, easy.
Yeah, Steelers have a 5-game lead on them in the division. I'm taking the Steelers as well. Next game up, the 2-8 New York Giants taking on the 4-6 Chicago Bears.
You know what's weird about this game? It's like clearly a bad game, but I'm sort of intrigued by it because I just think there's some players that are interesting to watch. You have Montgomery and you have Barkley, you have Daniel Jones. Mitch Trubisky, by the way, as bad a year as he's had, 2 of the last 3 home games, he's had 2 or more touchdown passes. I'll take the Bears.
Yeah, I'm taking the Bears in this one too. Until Daniel Jones decides he wants to show up and be the same guy he was in the preseason, I'm not going to take the Giants yet. Next up, we got the Tampa Bay Buccaneers at 3-7 taking on the Atlanta Falcons, who are also at 3-7.
Boy, the Falcons look like they're playing way better right now. Obviously, I think the Falcons are a better team, or should be a better team than their record indicates. This is probably the best matchup for entertainment purposes of 2 3-7 teams, I can imagine. But I like the Falcons. I think that with Matt Ryan being back, they'll be in great shape. Julio Jones, by the way, only 2 years ago in this matchup, the late November matchup against the Bucs, had his career high, that 253-yard receiving game. I don't think he'll do that, but yeah, I like the Falcons.
Well, with both teams at 3-7, I'm going to take I always take the better quarterback, and that's always going to be Matt Ryan over Jameis Winston.
Unless you're talking interceptions.
Well, then there you go. There you go. If you want to talk turnovers, then Jameis Winston's your guy, eating that W. But I'm going to take the Falcons in this one. I think they blow them out. I think they'll blow them out. Next up, man, I'm looking at these games. There are not many good games this week, but here's another one.
And there's not many late ones either.
No, here's another one. The Jacksonville Jaguars at 4-6 will travel to Nashville, take on the 5-5 Tennessee Titans.
Yep, one of the 2 afternoon games, and that's it. Just 2 of them. You know what's? Don't ask me how. Don't ask me why. Ever since Ryan Tannehill has started playing at Tennessee, he looks like a different quarterback. And they look like a different team. I like what the Titans are doing. They have a lot more life behind Tannehill. They're at home. I think they're going to win again.
Well, this is a coin toss one. We were talking about this the other night off the air. It's a coin toss. I had fun in Nashville. I'm taking the Titans.
Yeah.
Just because. Next up, we got arguably the best game of the day. The New England Patriots at 9-1 are hosting the 6-4 Dallas Cowboys.
Yeah, Tom Brady is listed as questionable, but then again, this is Bill Belichick we're talking about. Look, Brady's not going to sit this game out. This is an opportunity to make a big statement for the Cowboys. I think the Cowboys can win this game, but they're going to have to be basically perfect. I don't think they will win this game, but they do have enough talent to do it. If Prescott can get enough time, not only is Amari Cooper dangerous, but Michael Gallup, former CSU Ram, has become, if not a star, one of the better number 2 receivers in the league. And then you're not even touching Ezekiel Elliott yet. The Cowboys have the kind of physical offense that can give that really good Patriots defense some trouble. But I am not picking against Tom Brady and the New England Patriots in Foxborough. Not yet.
We'll see. The one thing you can do, and the formula is always keep Tom Brady off the field. Right. And the Cowboys can do that with their run game. Dak Prescott's looked great this year.
That guy's going to get
he's
paid.
He's definitely proven me wrong.
Boy, is he going to get paid.
He is. Yeah, he's going to get. He might get his $30 million that he wants.
He's going to get a new record deal. I think. I really do.
But you know, I look at it, and then Tom Brady's got this elbow injury.
Yeah, whatever.
How much does that impact him? I'm going to take the Cowboys.
Ooh, I like it.
I'm taking them.
That's bold. Usually, Cowboys and Patriots. I'm just, I don't know. Hoping a meteor hits the stadium or something.
Yeah, I could be wrong. It could just be. Yeah, these are the 2 most hated teams in the entire world.
Right.
So I don't think anyone should watch that game. Watch the Jacksonville, Tennessee game.
Yeah, I don't know if you could even sell me on that one. That might have been the best game of the day, but the best game is the next one, though.
Yeah, the San Francisco 49ers hosting the Green Bay Packers.
I have no idea on this one. This is a coin toss. The The Niners are favored by 3. That's basically the home field advantage. It's kind of like saying that the Niners by 1 point. You know what Aaron Rodgers can do in big games. He doesn't do it as often as he used to. I like what the Niners are doing. Under the bright lights, I think there is some pressure on the Niners. I think they're overachieving. I think they're really good, but 9-1 seems like they're maybe overachieving a bit. I wonder if this is the game. They're going to come back to earth. I think the injury to Kittle has made things tough. I'm going to take the Packers. I think this is the kind of game when Aaron Rodgers is the most dangerous. They're underdogs. They're on the road, and he can just do his thing. He's playing with house money. Aaron Rodgers doesn't usually get to do that, so I think the Packers end up winning that game.
I'm going to take the 49ers if George Kittle plays because I think he's going to be the X factor.
If he doesn't,
then I'm going to take the Packers.
Yeah.
And this is a cool one because of the Shanahan coaching tree with Matt LaFleur and Kyle Shanahan. But I'm going to take the 49ers if Kittle's healthy just because I don't think Jimmy Garoppolo is going to have the type of performance he had last week when he was sitting on my fantasy football bench. But if Kittle's playing, Garoppolo's got to use him. That's his number one target. I'm going to take the 49ers in that one. Otherwise, I'm taking the Packers. Let's move on to the Monday night game as the Baltimore Ravens, who are arguably the best team in the AFC, taking on a disappointing Rams team in LA.
They're disappointing, but they still have a winning record. They're still 6-4. Look, the Ravens are playing great. If there's one guy, though, that I would trust to be able to contain the Ravens offense, it's Wade Phillips. A guy who understands, he's seen it all. He has an idea of a scheme against it. That said, I think that what you're seeing with Lamar Jackson is he runs, but Lamar Jackson doesn't run and take hits. He's one of the smarter running quarterbacks I've ever seen. He runs and he knows when the play's over and he gets out of bounds. He doesn't even slide generally. He just bails. He gets out of bounds, gets no hits. So I like the Ravens. I actually think they're even maybe more dangerous than usual on that fast surface in the turf in LA. So I am going to take the Ravens. I think they continue, but I think it's going to be a really good game.
Yeah, I'm going to take Baltimore as well. I'm not betting against Lamar Jackson right now. I mean, this guy, yes, he's playing at MVP
He's got to be
level,
the MVP of the league
but
now.
It's almost something we've never seen before.
He has almost 800 rushing yards already.
That's insane. He could end up with what? How many weeks we got left?
Well, I mean,
1,400 rushing yards?
They have 6 more games. So maybe 1250 on pace, roughly.
Yeah. I mean,
and 10 touchdowns.
That's impressive from a quarterback. So I'm going to take the Ravens in this one as well.
Yeah, I think that's what we'll go with that one as well. The Denver Broncos, of course, play in Buffalo against the Bills. It's going to be cold. It's going to be chilly. Bills' record is, well, the opposite of the Broncos. I'll tell you what I think will happen next. All right, without further ado, the Denver Broncos go into Buffalo, 3-7, trying to get their fourth win. Brandon Allen with his third start of the year. My prediction, brought to you by King Soopers, the official grocer of the Denver Broncos, isn't one you'd like. I think the Buffalo Bills have just a bit too much. I think these defenses in a cold weather game are going to hold up pretty well. But Buffalo has a lot of speed, weapons that are a little bit different than what the Broncos have faced all year. They really haven't faced a quarterback like Josh Allen. Devin Singletary's playing well. They have a lot of speed, a lot of ability, reasonably healthy. I think the Bills will win this game 23-16. Maybe the Broncos can get over 20 again. They've scored 24 and 23 points each in the last two games for Brandon Allen, a quarterback, but they have not played a defense like this before. This is the best defense they have played. And Brandon Allen can only surprise so many more people. Maybe a small sample size, Vic Fangio. But we may find out that the Broncos have gotten a false positive from Brandon Allen in this game. The low completion percentage, questionable decision here and there. They're going to have a huge game out of Courtland Sutton, and I expect that the Bills are going to do everything they can to make sure that doesn't happen. There aren't very many Denver Broncos who can go up to Buffalo in this game against that defense and wreck the game for Buffalo. Courtland Sutton is number one on that list. And it's no one is even close. Phillip Lindsay's maybe the next one, but we've seen the usage pattern. The Broncos are going to go 50-50, which means with Royce Freeman there going up the middle. I've already explained how difficult that's going to be. No Andy Janovich. The three interior linemen for the Broncos all missed practices this week for injury. And you're going against the strongest part of that Buffalo D. Right up the gut. I think the Broncos do get a touchdown, but I think the rest of them are field goals. And I think Buffalo is just a smidge better. Get another touchdown on the kind of broken play that seems to have been a bugaboo for the Broncos all year long. Seems like there's one or two plays a game where the Broncos defense just falls apart. I think it'll happen again where the quarterback is mobile and as strong-armed as Josh Allen. So my pick is Buffalo 23, Broncos 16. And like I've said most weeks, I hope I'm wrong. But there you go. Around the rest of the world in sports, the other big news in town tonight, the Nuggets knock off the Boston Celtics. An ugly injury to Kemba Walker early on for Boston. He puts his head down while dribbling, kind of loses the ball, and goes headfirst right into his own teammate. And has to be carted off on the stretcher, gets a concussion. The Celtics call it concussion syndrome. Concussion symptoms. And Walker does not finish the game, playing only 12 minutes. The Nuggets were able to go off the races, but they really had to fight to hold on. They do get the win, 96-92. Nikola Jokic, with his third triple-double of the year, ties John Havlicek for 12th all-time after going back-to-back with wins over the Rockets and the Celtics. And winners, by the way, the Nuggets, by the way, have won 4 straight. They have won 8 of their last 9. Now they go on to take a Phoenix team on who will come to Denver on Sunday night. Hope the Nuggets, after these big games, don't relax like they did against the Atlanta Hawks and lose this game to a 500 Phoenix Suns team. Elsewhere up north in Laramie, the Wyoming Cowboys win the border war again, this time 17-7 in frigid weather. 4 straight wins for Wyoming, and 8 of the last 11 as the Bronze Boot stays in Laramie. This season's been a tricky one for the Rams. Patrick O'Brien has had to come in and do a lot of heavy lifting as a backup when Colin Hill got injured. Rams are 4-7. their chances of going to a bowl game go by the wayside with this loss. And to be totally honest, it becomes difficult looking at Mike Bobo's situation and then knowing that over the course of his career at CSU thus far, against rivals Wyoming, Air Force, and Colorado, he has gone 2-13. May end up looking for a new coach in Fort Collins. The Colorado Avalanche tomorrow will be back at home, taking on the Maple Leafs, getting a little healthier. Not expected to have Landeskog or Rantanen back, but they did have Grubauer back. And they have an opportunity to maybe get things going again. The Avs are in good shape, 13-7-2, taking on a Toronto team that is sitting right at 500, 10-10-4. Avalanche get a little bit of rest. Maybe they can get that done. Rest of the college slate locally, Air Force, well, that, of course, right here, like we usually do, will travel to New Mexico, take on the Lobos. Air Force is 8-2, cruising. New Mexico, 2-8. Air Force's chance of a 10-win season can continue with a win tomorrow. The Colorado Buffaloes have an opportunity to make a bowl, slight as it is, and it is very, very slight. They will have to win tomorrow night on a national game, broadcast on ESPN, against Washington for their finale in Boulder. It's a tough pull, and they need to win it and then win at Utah, currently sitting number 7 in the country. So not very likely, but drops to 0 if they don't get the win on Saturday. So all sorts of good stuff coming up this weekend locally in sports. And, of course, the Broncos on Sunday. And we'll have an opportunity to talk all about that on Monday, break down where the Broncos are, where the Broncos are going. Could we see Drew Lock? Is it possible all this has been a bluff? And maybe even to an extent an understandable one. Depends. If the Broncos lose, there's a chance. If the Broncos lose and Brandon Allen plays poorly, there's a better chance. If the Broncos win, regardless of how they win, I don't think you'll see Drew Lock against the Chargers.
You think we'll see him at all this year then?
I don't know. I really don't.
That's the scary
There
thing.
seems to be no plan. And there seems to be, if you're going to take them at face value, a disconnect between what John Elway wants for Drew Lock and thinks of Drew Lock and what Vic Fangio seems to think of Drew Lock. We don't know. But each new Sunday brings a little bit more clarification. So for the Broncos, in a lost season in which the playoffs will not be coming, at least for Broncos fans, a win would be nice. It's always fun. But clarity should be what they're looking for. Learn something about their young players. Learn something about which guys you're going to need to keep in free agency. Win once or twice and maybe give Justin Simmons a reason to stick around besides the paycheck. It's an important game for the Broncos, even without playoff implications. We'll be back on Monday to talk all about it. We'll hand it over to our friends at Sports Center all night. Have a terrific weekend. For Kevin Kistner in the booth, follow him at Kistner Radio on Twitter. You can follow me at Sdrotar. That's Sdrotar. It's been a fun week. See if the Broncos can get a win. Be nice to talk about a win. See if that happens. Be safe. Have fun. This is The Fan Late Night. 104.3 The Fan.